Hey there, Planet Zooers. It's Mathletee here. Welcome back to Houston Zoo. A little flyover of what we've done in the past and what's coming up in this video. So here we are starting our speed build. I did have to move a few things around. The power supply was in the way, but I needed it. So I decided to move it in with the seal habitat from last week's episode. I did do the reflection pool area multiple times, so I only included the successful edit. I took out the others, and so I'm bringing in this pathing, trying to keep everything on a square. I did have a little when I got done with the reflection pool for the third time, so I filled it in with trees, so hopefully it's not too noticeable that it's a little askew. Connecting in those paths so I can start the covered path walk. I'm testing out different construction materials to try to get the correct feel and look of what they have at the Houston Zoo. So ultimately I decided on a looks like a concrete pillar and the copper classic pieces. Those aren't copper, but metal. There we go. Anyway, so they do have these pillars with the classic style metal up top, and then it's covered and runs all the way down into the middle of the zoo kind of. I did finally get to make a visit yesterday. We had a lot of fun. It was super hot. We managed to make it all day, and it was an interesting visit. I was disappointed at the beginning. They have torn down the Macaw Cafe, which I was like, oh no, I spent so much time with that, but I'm going to leave it in the zoo for now. They have big construction curtains up with tarp all along one of the pathways on the other side near the seal habitat. Hello, Ruby. And so they are building a Galapagos Island experience, and I think some kind of penguin experience. I'm not sure what type of penguin. However, everything that was on the right is no longer there. I think that is where they had their exotic birds, and they've been moved, and so that side is not in Google Earth, but I will just see what I'm going to do. We're not going that direction anyway right now. We're going to be going on this side where I'm building the path. Behind our mechanic there is a building that has it's like a natural experience, they call it. They have, I think there were meerkats, or no, they were prairie dogs. They have prairie dogs outside, and then inside they have some freshwater exhibits and a couple of other things. So that's what I'm going to start tackling next week. Right here I'm making my column, putting in the colors, and as I did that, I did notice there was a lot of what I hear called Z-fighting, so I had to go in and move them. So now I'm trying to make sure it's perpendicular and parallel to that wall. I was having a hard time with the tree in the way, so I just pulled one out to use as a reference so I could try to keep it as straight as possible, so I would not need to adjust too much going down, so I didn't have kind of a funny little sway to the left or right. So I ultimately decided I was going to build basically a template of hopefully everything on a good angle. So what I'm doing right now is trying to find the center of this little 8 by, I'm not sure, but anyway, it's about as wide as the path. So I wanted to go straight down, and I wanted to make sure that this pillar, because of its awkward nature and shape, would also go straight down, so I wouldn't have too many troubles with the advanced move arrows. And so I'm also putting in spacing so that hopefully all of it is somewhat in the same measurement apart. So this was the best way I could think of instead of just eyeballing it. So I made a blueprint of that, so I could duplicate it over to the other side when I'm ready for it. Now I'm looking for what I'm going to use for my roof, and right here I realized, oh, I should have picked a color, and so got that in, and there we go. Grabbing all of those pieces to make a group, doing the same with these, and that way I can shift it over. I got lucky, it did let me just move it, but I wanted this over here for my placement. Sometimes it will make you make a blueprint in order to move things depending on what you have in the group, and then that way I could make sure that it was the same on both sides in the center of the path as possible, and duplicating that all the way down, putting in the grid pathing. I think my path is a little longer than it really is. Things in the game I find often end up a little bit bigger in scale. I'm also trying to accommodate that this will be a main thoroughfare to various parts of the zoo, so I want to make sure that it doesn't get clogged. If I use smaller paths, then I run the risk of my workers not being able to make it. And this is attempt number 1 of making my reflection pool, and what I discovered was it is a little too deep. It wasn't that drastic when I went back and checked, so I took it out and started over. So here is the actual one that ends up in the zoo. So I thought I had taken it all out, but we'll leave that little one in. Here I am trying to get just a little step up and a step down. It took me a couple of different ideas to figure it out. And again, I thought I was on a perpendicular between these two parallel paths, but unfortunately I was not, but that's okay. So I finally got my little step in, got my archer in, just to make sure, and then doing a little bit on the side. There is a ramp on this end, so I put in a 4-meter path alongside it to do that ramp, and then trying to connect right here so they can get across if they need to. I had to redo that a couple of times as I did the rest of the reflection down the way there. Sorry, I had a moment in my brain where I just lost all words. So originally I wanted to just flatten that out, and I could see that it was leaving those little pieces on the edge, so I used the path to flatten it out and then removed it, creating what I wanted to be my barrier was just this simple curb, and that was how it is in the images. Unfortunately, when I go to make the reflection pool, there's a lot of terrain from the path. I did try taking the path out, and any way that I did it, I wasn't too happy, so I decided to put the path back and make my space for my water to just cover that up with something else. So when I looked at the pictures that I took at the zoo, this isn't the prettiest water feature in the world. So mine, I think, ended up a little nicer than it is in real life. They actually do have a little bit of green coming out of the edge. I just didn't like that unfinished look. I struggle sometimes. I really like things to be symmetrical and a certain way. I'm trying to flatten this out, kind of made some little hills. So I put in water. I felt like it just wasn't good enough, so here's taking all that stuff out. I was trying to use the stamp tool. This should have been my clue that I was not straight, since this was off a little bit and I was really struggling to go all the way down and stay within those. And then I attempt to do it again, and then I ended up accidentally making this way deeper than I wanted, but that's okay, can't really see down there. So I gave up and just decided to use this flatten to foundation tool. I tried to do the sides here with the flatten to surface, and I got really frustrated with how that was going. I didn't like the way it was coming up, as I was trying to avoid having to use flatten to foundation on the, or flatten to terrain on the paths, because it'll just put those pieces out there. So ultimately, I just decided here's where I'm just going to cover up those little edges. I'm going to fill it up with water and move on. And then I struggled to get those to connect back in, so I had to delete everything, including all those little connections back there. I'll have to put them back in. I was like, I'll just leave it in case I take stuff out again, and I'll connect them at the end. So I've decided we're going to cover the terrain here. The water didn't come up as close as I wanted it to. I think if it had come closer, I would have left some of that there, but I felt the gap was just too big. I did leave some of the terrain that pokes out from these covers on this end, since it is kind of like that in the zoo, and I knew I was covering it up with plants. Adding in my water effects, I did start with waterfall ones. Those didn't get the feel I wanted, so I switched and went to, I forget what they're called, but water effects for fountains. I had really hoped that the large one would be a little more grandiose. I did put 2 in above each other and decided to just go with that one. The one at the zoo shoots up really high. They have less of them, but I went ahead and did my own thing here, adding in the little plants that they have on each end. Hello, Ruby. And moving those over there. They do have a sculpture in the middle that kind of looks like a butterfly. So when I get done with the cattails here, I decided to keep it simple and did my own statues. It looked like they only had 1. I don't remember from walking through if they had 2, but I decided to put 2 in mine. Ruby is happy today, and those are happy squeaks. I'm looking through the in-game statues. I was hoping to find something that inspired me that I thought would look good in the middle here. I liked the tiger, but I ultimately decided not to use it. I almost put him in the middle of what I'm getting ready to build and decided against it. So I started with this, rotated it around. I did think about making it kind of like a globe and flipping it over onto the top, but then I thought they kind of looked like exaggerated water lilies, so I left it like that. Adding in some lights, checking for power because I could tell that one didn't turn on. So I'm going to add 2 power supplies here. I was a little upset that I had to add them. I'm going to have to hide them, and they don't hide very well. I thought about putting them underground, but I really didn't want to start building underground tunnels in this zoo. It is one of my favorite things to do, is to put staff facilities, especially water treatment and power, underground. Several of my franchise zoos have large underground areas. It's a lot of fun. It's real challenging to build underground too. Adding in lights underneath each of the water effects, and grabbing my archer again so I can make sure that I don't make comically large pieces here. I couldn't find anything in game that was gonna do what I wanted to cover up this little area, so I made myself my own little brick wall here. I will put this on the workshop. I'll probably finish out that other side that's under the ground so that if anybody wants to use it in their zoo, they can. I use this same design and structure all throughout the edges of this. I may also put my reflection pool into a habitat temporarily so that I could put it on the workshop as well. If y'all are interested in that, let me know if you'd like me to do that. Trying to make sure that I keep that pattern going so it doesn't look like the same thing stacked on top of each other. Whenever you look at bricks, they do have that pattern. They're not just directly stacked one on top. They are always offset. Hiding trash cans, so hopefully my guests will not walk through into those big brick walls. And it also covered up the sections of the paths where I connected them in. So it's not exactly to the zoo. The zoo only had it on one on each side. At first I thought, oh, I'll just copy this over, and I was like, whoa, this is way too big. So I'm making another one. I can also put the small version on the workshop if y'all are interested. So again, let me know if you want anything out of these builds that I haven't put in my workshop. I'm more than happy to share those work pieces with you. Originally I wanted to have 5 benches on each side. For whatever reason, no matter how I tried, what settings I had, on this side they would not line up the same way they were on the other side. I didn't have that struggle as often on the other side. So ultimately I decided, well, I'll just cover these up with something, so I'm not going to worry too much about how they're sitting or if they're too far apart. So I'm picking out what I wanted to put here, and I decided to go with this concrete pillar. It stuck out a little far over there, and I was thinking about something different for the back, but I just ended up using the same piece offset a little bit to create a back for the bench, and kept it simple. So I'll pull that forward and bring one to the other side. And I should have gotten my second clue that I wasn't exactly at the angles to have it be parallel and perpendicular, because as I started moving these, I would have to shift them forward or backward as the benches started to peek through. I thought maybe I just didn't quite get it square on. But when I finished this and took my first aerial look, I could see it was a little bit moving to the left as I went back from the seal experience. But that's okay. Trees cover that up. And then right here, when I double check my images, I'll take those benches on the ends out. They actually have plants there as you walk in. So I decided to go with their look and put plants there. Getting in those shade trees on both sides. I just used 2 of the same tree. Whoa, the camera got a little crazy there. Sorry about that. Sometimes it kicks me out. But anyway, I just repeated those and rotated them to make my life easier. So now I'm putting in those little tree or plant planters that they have right here as you come in. So taking out those groups, I did notice I'd accidentally duplicated it a little bit when I go to move it to the other side. I decided to just put in some simple elephant ears here. And as I'm trying to grab that one mulch piece, I had to go underground to get it. It really wanted to select everything but that mulch piece. So finally I get it. I group them all together, move it to the other side, rotate it around. I looked at the other end, decided I wanted to finish this side first. I am going to use a workshop item. It's a fantasy fence by Jumi. I'm not sure how you say it, so if I said that wrong, I'm so sorry. I really liked the way it looked. It was exactly what I kept seeing in the zoo and around in this area, and it's askew posts. So I used it to help me recreate this one, which at the zoo in Houston, they have metal ones. They weren't made out of wood. So thank you very much for that. I love that fence. It's super cute, and it really helped me to quickly make my own fence. And so I'm just moving some of these poles around to give them a little bit of depth. They go backwards and forwards. They're in and out. They're not straight up. And so adding that in, grouping them all together, moving some of them up and down. I did do a blueprint of this as well so that I could use it in the zoo here as I connected things. So I'm a little hesitant to share that one since it wasn't fully my creation. I used someone else's creation to put this together, but I really enjoy how it looked, and I wanted to give that creator credit for their hard work on their fantasy fence. So I'm just copying it over, pulling it down into the ground so I can try to keep the top a little bit level as I go down that slope there. Using that blueprint in my game that I made to get started for this. I do see that it's going into my path, but that's okay. I will grab them all and get real aerial, flatten it out, get it nice and straight, scoot it back, and do this side here. Angle them up and in and get them to attach, and then use my blueprint for that one. Oh no, I didn't. I think I just copied it. Sometimes I do use the blueprint when I've made changes to some of these so that I can get a fresh one, so I can extend it like I did there, or shrink it so that it will fit. Copying over that same group of trees and taking off the ones I don't need. Here I'm designing what's going to go inside. I was trying to figure out what bushes I wanted to put in there. This space is a little wider than it really is in the zoo. I had to make it a little bit wider because those facilities that are inside the seal experience, their negative radius comes out. So I wanted to avoid the guests are unhappy at the staff facilities. And using that little template, thought about putting some more bushes and then decided not to. Finishing off that little planter on the other end. Apparently a lot of this was grouped together that made for weird copying, so I'm trying to separate those out of the group. It also looked like I had several duplicates that didn't need to be there, so I started deleting until I saw that I needed to put them back, or that I think I had gotten the last one. Finally I get them grouped together, so zoom way out so I could move them all the way down here, and then I ended up having to split them from each other so that I could get them to cover the path just right and fit in on their end correctly. Then I realized I did not duplicate, I had just moved, so I had to do the other side again really quickly, grabbing those fence pieces to put on this side, and that side didn't have as much of a slope going, so I'm adjusting my fence and then just bringing those down into the ground instead of angling it. And that was my solution there. Then I decided, well, I'll take the in-game railing off right there and copy that over, and then doing the same thing on the other side and using what I already have here just to create the same thing. Looks like I didn't grab it all, so connecting those in, and there we go. I then decided it was looking a little bare inside here. I didn't go back and look. I just went with what I thought looked like a good flow. I'm not a master gardener or anything. Oh, Ruby. She is making some noises. Sorry about that. And then just duplicating them over, realizing I had accidentally deleted too many right there. Adding in some plants back here to break up the bench from the green space. And then loving copy paste. Just going to put those over, checking to make sure they all line up. Covering up those power supplies a little bit, adding some foliage around them, so hopefully they're not as an eyesore in the middle of my green spaces. I'm hoping I can move those around later into other things as I get further along. And to get guests to walk down here, I am temporarily putting in an exhibit, so I just chose the first thing, and here we go. We're at the beginning of the zoo and walking through. If this is the first time you're viewing any of my content, you can go back and look at how to place this. The entrance is available in the workshop. I haven't made any changes through here, although when I was saying earlier, they did tear down the Macaw Cafe back there when I visited the zoo. And when you walk through here, they've kind of brought the gift shop out. They have some outside available booths to shop at. And then they also have makeshift like food truck in the middle. So I guess that's the temporary Macaw Cafe. They're building a Galapagos island off to the right where the Macaw Cafe was. So we're going to start with the left, and as we go forward in moving, or I should say not moving, building, right here there's some changes I will need to make that are different from what Google Earth had. It was 2019 they walked through the zoo. But right there to the left will be what I start next week, which is going to be the nature experience building, where they have the prairie dogs and some water exhibits inside. So I'm gonna have to get really creative on how to build those. Walking through our covered path and over to our new addition, the reflection pool walk, which is what I call it. I may put in some floor pieces to cover up those paths not connecting. I'll think about that later, what I want to put there. I've thought that about my plaza as well. I just haven't decided on anything. So here's our view. As you look through, I'm going to go down this side so I don't see my highlighted worker I used for the Tegid cam. Walking by our huge sculpture here. I like to think it kind of reminds me of like a big water lily made out of metal. I was hoping to catch a guest maybe sitting. The only one I did catch was sitting kind of in a glitch. I need to probably look under there, see where my benches are, take some out. They were sitting in the brick wall part. I'm going to take a look back. I think it makes a great walkthrough. I love it. I think it came out pretty good compared to what they actually have in the zoo. Go visit our temporary exhibit here. See if we can see one of those critters. And he is in there. He's down there at the bottom right there. And I've got a couple guests looking. Again, I needed power, so I just put that solar power down. And looking back towards the entrance of the zoo, I'm going to turn it to nighttime. Take a look at what it looks like with the lighting. I think I will add some more lighting as I walk through. I felt like maybe I needed some lighting towards the benches. The Houston Zoo typically is not open at night, except for Christmas time. And they do zoo lights, where they put in different lights all throughout the zoo of different things. Some of them are sponsored, so they'll have radio stations that are local. And I feel like I need a little more light on the left. But I'm super happy with how my lighting came out inside the pool. I may sink the lights down into the water a little more. I was hoping they wouldn't quite be so visible. I didn't catch that until just now. I don't know, maybe I'll leave them. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments if I should sink them down further or just leave them there. It is a little realistic. A lot of times you do see the lights right there. And coming down the other side. And there we have it. There is the newest addition to the Houston Zoo. Over on this side, I'll probably just put up what they have in the zoo right now, which is a blocked off tarp with advertising for the Galapagos edition. So next week, I'll be starting to build on the other side. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for checking out my video. I'll see you next Sunday with the next edition of the Houston Zoo inspired series. and may the RNG odds be ever in your favor.